Hey everybody, welcome to Super Comic Fun Time on New Comic Book Day. And true to form, I mostly got old stuff again. I also got The Prisoner #1, which originally came out last week, but I had to order it. My store didn't have it. It was slated to come out on the 50th anniversary of the first time CBS broadcast the show back in 1968. So this show is 50 years old last year, and it's one of my favorite TV shows. And so we will see how the comic does in a few minutes. But first, just know it's going to be a spoiler, full spoiler. I'm going to just say like a little bit beforehand, give my impressions, and then go right into like spoiling the book. So if you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch. Okay, first now the news. The biggest story of the day is Swamp Thing has been officially announced for 2019. Swamp Thing is based on the comic book by Len Wein and I forget the other guy. Anyways, I opened up the book last fall. Very good writing, very good book. You know, Swamp Thing's this monster. Alex Holland, he gets murdered and he runs into a swamp on fire, and his secret formula he was working on, which was to grow food, you know, abundance. In the 70s, people were worried about the population bomb. It gets mixed in with his DNA and he becomes a swamp creature. So there's already been a TV show. There were 2 movies back in the 80s. The first one is pretty good. It's directed by Wes Craven and co-stars Adrienne Barbeau. And so that's a great movie. I remember watching the second one, and I enjoyed it at the time, but I wasn't like being hypercritical. It was just a movie that was on. A lot of people who are fans of the first one say the second one is totally terrible, and that is probably true. I just don't remember it that well. And then USA did a half-hour TV show. Was it in the late 80s or was it in the 90s? I forget. I didn't really care. The interesting thing about it is the guy who played Swamp Thing in the movies reprised his role for the TV show, and he was pretty good. It was like, you know how some people feel they're born to play a certain role. There was the guy who played the Master on Doctor Who, not the first one, not the, you know, the one who was there through the Tom Baker era, and I can't remember his name right now, but all he ever wanted to play was the Master, and once he got that chance, that's all he wanted to do was be the Master. So that's kind of cool, and it seemed like the guy who played Alec Holland, or the Swamp Thing in the TV show, he seemed like he really enjoyed that role, and he seemed to, you know, like, I only watched a few episodes. I kind of avoided it. I don't know why, but I've heard from people who did watch it and who were big Swamp Thing fans back in those days that it wasn't very good. And the few episodes I saw were kind of interesting. You know, they brought back Arcane and made him a young man. And I think I did one of the first stories in the Swamp Thing books dealt with Arcane, but in the comic books he was an old man and then he dies, and he doesn't really come back until the Ellen Moore phase when Swamp Thing goes to hell and he runs into Arcane there. And so yeah, so like a lot of people are very excited for this new TV show. DC has had a very good track record in bringing TV shows, you know, superheroes to the small screen, and so I'm sure it will be good. I don't know exactly, you know, it's still in development, and you know, who knows, at this point maybe something will come up and it will end up not happening, but we hope not. We look forward to the Swamp Thing, and it will be very exciting if the show is good, says the guy who doesn't watch very much TV. Okay, so then that's the only big news I saw today. I didn't check on the Jawbreakers Indiegogo today. There's still, I think, 7 days left on it. And I just copied all the links from yesterday's show and put them down below. So there's that. And then let's go ahead and see what I got for New Comic Book Day. So in a few minutes, I will talk about Prisoner #1. Let's see, let's just put that there for now. Then I got some more of the True Believers. I enjoyed the issues I got last week so much, so I got the Inhumans. The Inhumans are a group I don't really remember that well as a kid. I might have only come across them once or twice, and they, you know, I don't think they impressed me that much. I certainly don't really remember them. And then Iron Man. So I didn't really look at it. I just said, oh, I want to get some more of these True Believers because I like the ones I got last week. So I'm not sure if this is like, oh yeah, right here. It is Tales of Suspense. So it's the origin of Iron Man. And, you know, for $1, you can't really go too wrong on these things. I really like them. This is still part of the Kirby 100 celebration. Yeah, that's not looking good. Okay. And then What If the Phoenix Had Not Died? So yeah, What If could be a fun series, and sometimes it could be a terrible series. When it was being published when I was a kid, I thought they were really good. Sometimes they would like reprint ones from earlier, and I didn't realize it. Like there was like, what if the Fantastic Four had spent more time in the cosmic rays? And that one was actually like an earlier one. I didn't know. When I read it for the first time, I thought it was awesome, and I didn't really realize it was a reprint. So yeah, I'm sure I will enjoy this one, and it'll be, you know, what ifs were always a little thicker. So I was a big X-Men fan. I think I talked about how my first issue of the X-Men was with the Dazzler. Okay, so those are the books I got from the comic book store. Then I also went to Half Price Books, and I really wasn't looking for anything. I just happened to be in the area, and so, you know, when you're in the area, you look around, and so I found these books there, and they're The Tomb of Dracula by Marv Wolfman, and this is the Epic. It's under the Epic imprint, which in the early 80s, like there was this magazine called Heavy Metal. It might still be around, and that was you know, an adult fantasy magazine. I read a few issues of it, and to me it was like kind of over-sexualized. I read it because I was a comic book fan and I wanted to mature reading, but a lot of the stories were kind of gross to me. So so then like Marvel decided to do their own thing, their own sort of adult themed comic book. And I did like it much better. I thought the stories were actually good. I mentioned before Metamorphosis Odyssey, which I don't think I ever finished, but I did enjoy that story as much of it as I read. And then like, you know, I remember another one like Seven Moons Cast Complex Shadows. And I don't really remember anything about the stories. I just remember enjoying them. So yeah, there was Epic Magazine. Originally, that was supposed to be sort of a vehicle for Doug Mensch's Weird World, because he had just done the 3-issue trilogy for, was it Marvel Premiere? It was like one of those big newsstand magazines. And here we have, so like, you know, this is a small pack. There's only like, I think 4 issues in here. You know, here it says 4 comics at $2.50 each. So, you know, I figure these might be even collectible since they're part of the Marvel. And, you know, maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but I did like, I did read like Marv Wolfman, like in the early 80s, they had like Howard the Duck at the Tomb of Dracula, and they were like magazine-sized black and white books. And I'm not familiar with these at all. I'm guessing that, so like right here's the first one, first cover. So, yeah, Marv Wolfman, Gene Colin, I'm sorry, and L. Williamson. So let's just go ahead and take a quick look and see if we can see the copyright. 1991, so the Epic thing was around a lot longer than I knew. So these books are from 91. And yeah, so like Marv Wolfman was kind of like the Dracula guy at Marvel. So here we go. I'm going to put them in order. I already showed you one. And then we have, there's the cover for issue 2. And unlike the magazine that I read, you know, in the early 80s, these are colored. So that'll be interesting. I did like, you know, I liked, I didn't mind the black and white, but it's all, you know, color is always nice too. So I don't know anything about this series, so it'll be fun to read and catch up on one of my favorite Marvel characters. Now, one thing I did have a problem with, and you know, I can kind of understand how they couldn't get away with it, is I didn't think Dracula would be running around the modern world in his opera cape and, you know, his Sunday duds. I kind of thought he would try to blend in more, and but everybody, Dracula kind of, certain things get fixed in our mind, right? And Dracula is one of those things. Bela Lugosi fixed Dracula in our mind with the cape and the Star of David around his neck. And it's hard for us to move on from that. Now we've had modern vampire stories, like The Lost Boys in the 80s was one of those revolutionary stories that like made people look at vampires in a whole new way. There was a movie about the same time called Vamp, starring Grace Jones, who was also in the James Bond film A View to a Kill. I'm not having any luck getting that back in the sleeve. And I remember liking that one when I saw it, and I think I might have rented it later, like in the late 90s, and it wasn't as good as I'd remembered. Lost Boys is really good. 30 Days of Night was one I really enjoyed. And Near Dark came out around 87, and that is one of the best vampire movies. And of course, there you don't have the opera capes and whatnot. You have a more realistic take on a group of vampires who kind of hang out together. They're almost like a family, and a lot of it is just for survival. And Lance Henriksen is in that movie, and I forget who else, but that was kind of a surprise movie because, everything in those days was kind of a surprise because I didn't really read, and I still don't read like magazines like that tell you what movies are coming out, like Entertainment Weekly. And so you would, but a lot of times, like some more popular movies with a bigger budget behind them, they get advertising, and you can't almost escape from it. That's why I hated Star Wars before The Force Awakens even came out, because I could not get away from the freaking advertising. It was oppressive, and so like I didn't even plan on going to see the movie, and then my some friends said we're going to go see the movie, and I go, okay, fine. I wouldn't care if I didn't see it. I was really kind of hopeful at first when I heard Disney got it because of the experience with the prequels, but that's so much water under the bridge. And so anyways, Near Dark turned out to be this great vampire movie. Didn't hear of it, just kind of went to the movie and was blown away by it. And, for the most part, I say I dislike vampires because, for the most part, like, they aren't that good. The movies usually aren't that good. There was that one, what was it? Is like the insult guy was in it. I can't think of his name right now. Anyways, it's like some movies are really, really good, and it's usually the smaller ones, like the people who have the independent ideas, and then some of them are like Twilight, and they're terrible, and like you wonder why you even bothered to watch the first one. Okay, so I think that's enough rambling, and we are going to get into the prisoner number one now. So this is the cover I got. It's sort of like a member of the village, our main character, being hit by the bubble monster named Rover, and he's like getting hit by several of them. Now, apparently, this is a radio show in England too, so that might be fun to try to find, based on the classic 67 ITC series, volumes 1 and 2 now available. So yeah, full cast radio drama, starring Mark Elstob as number 6. I don't know who he is, but it's kind of cool to learn that this exists, and I will probably try to track that down because I'm a big Prisoner fan. I really didn't see it until I think like the early 90s. It was whenever Doctor Who went off the air. Like they stopped making Doctor Who in 1987, and I'm not sure how close. Like I used to watch every night Channel 11, every Sunday night Channel 11 out of Chicago would show an edited together Prisoner adventure, and I watched those for years. I even got my whole family hooked on it. The very first episode my mother watched was The Ark in Space, and she started laughing hysterically when she noticed that the costume the guy who was turning into a monster was wearing was plain old bubble wrap. But at the time, like I think the show was shot in 74, And according to the director of that show, if you listen to the commentary on the DVD, he says, like, at that time, bubble wrap was new. And I just kind of thought, you know, hey, it's got this interesting texture. People won't recognize it, and you know, it'll make a good monster makeup thing. Plus, the BBC was notoriously cheap, so you know, anywhere they could save money. And so, by the time my mom saw it a few years later, like it could have been around 79 or 80, I'm not sure, when you know, I started to get my family. I know I was in high school, but. So yeah, so bubble wrap. So yeah, I got my whole family hooked on that. And then when they stopped showing those on Channel 11, they brought The Prisoner on, and it was the first time I'd ever seen it. This is a show that had acquired legendary status in my mind. I had heard about it for years. I had seen the Kirby drawing for, you know, he was going to do a version of it with somebody else. And there's a facsimile of the work he did do coming out in July, I think, and I've already got that pre-ordered, so very excited for that. And yeah, so like before I even saw it, I remember when I was in the Army, you know, VHS was really big then, and somebody had this catalog, and so I'm just pouring through it of these VHS tapes, and there's The Prisoner, and I'm just reading the descriptions, trying to get a picture in my mind of what this show is about. And when I saw the show, I was not disappointed. It was like, sometimes you imagine something and it's better in your imagination. In this case, it was sort of close, but because, you know, it was sort of like, you know, okay, so let's say like here, like I was here, let's say this is a cliff. So I was here, and then the prisoner ended up being here. It's something I could sort of see and get a basic outline of from reading the descriptions and stuff. But until I saw the show, I really didn't know what it was. Those were exciting times. So even before I saw the TV show, DC Comics around 80, it was for the, what would it have been? The 20th anniversary would have been around 87. And DC Comics was commissioned to do a kind of a sequel that had Patrick McGowan's blessing. Patrick McGowan was an actor. You can see him in some movies, like in, if you're a comic book fan, if you saw The Phantom from, what was it, 1995, 1996, he played the deceased father of the current Phantom in that movie. And he also had a role in Air Force One at that time. He was doing a lot of shows. And if you're a fan of Columbo, he was in 3 or 4 Columbos. So, you know, he's like this person who's like highly intelligent. Even before, you know, before he did the Prisoner, he was very famous for this show called Danger Man. And he was more or less a spy. And so when that show ended, he wanted to do his own show. So he co-created The Prisoner. I forget, it says right here, I don't have to remember, but yeah, right here. George Markstein was his co-creator. So yeah, right here, let's see if we can get that. So then when I saw this, you know, last week I went on Comixology and I saw, wow, they got a Prisoner comic. So I knew how to get it. Called around, none of the stores had it. So the one closest to me, I ordered it and it came today. Now, my general impression before I get into spoilers, it's this issue is okay. I had a feeling that it would be the way it is. It doesn't really disappoint me. It's not wowing me. If you're not a fan of The Prisoner, you might want to wait until there are a couple of issues out and take a look at it then. And you know, my basic problem with it is you get a lot of backstory in this and not a lot of the village. So with that being said, we are going to enter the spoiler zone. Okay, so this story isn't bad. It's just not great. But I expect that the next issue will be much better. So, you know, you've got, you know, it starts off with this sort of like burn notice, like this guy ends up getting called a traitor and, you know, he runs. Here's a very, you know, yeah, right here, traitor, high-ranking spy betrays country. So he's got to change his appearance. There's this guy here who's playing chess, and this is a very village-like motif. Like you see the tessellated black and white squares, and chess is a big theme within the village. Everybody is always kind of running their own sort of game. Information is traded on. I'm going to just go ahead and read you this little bit here. It says, in the 21st century, the global currency is no longer oil or gold, but information. And he who possesses it possesses the world. There is one place on the planet where the most valuable information is mined, a place that prides itself on mental fracking, promising to extract any secret from any individual using any means possible. It is perhaps the intelligence community's darkest secret. Aligned to no one political system or state, an autonomous institute free of state manipulation, the identity of its controller, the mysterious number one, is unknown. It is a place so secret, some believe it to be a myth. It is the village. Now read on. So like a lot of what you got going on here is like, I guess this guy is a spy. The guy here recognizes him. He's like changing his appearance from dark, he dyes his hair. And then this guy, if you're a spy, why are you going to wear like a coat like that? But that's symbolism. So, you don't worry about that too much. You don't worry about the kind of logic of the story. Because you're looking for the symbolism. So he owns this bed and breakfast, which he says like occasionally he rents it out to millennials to make it look real, but he's pretty sure the village knows about it. Then he spends like 4 days there and nobody tries to contact him. See what happened? And then like we find out why this is going on. So he orders a pizza, the pizza's drugged, and here, this is supposed to be Patrick McGoohan, I guess, in number 6. This is Leo McKern, who played number 2 in about 4 episodes, I think. Though one of the conceits of the show is that number 2 changed every week. Every week you got a new number 2. Occasionally they would repeat for an episode. Leo McKern was in the first episode. Oh no, he was in the Chimes of Big Ben. So anyways, he's a great actor. He's deceased now, sadly. He was also in a very popular show called Rumple of the Bailey, which I've seen a few episodes of, and he's a judge, and he refers to his wife as she who must be obeyed. So yeah, Leo McKern, Patrick McGoohan, they were great together. There's even they both, I think Leo McKern had a heart attack during the filming of the series finale, and Patrick McGoohan himself was said to have suffered a nervous breakdown that the show became that intense. So if you've never seen it, I believe it's available on YouTube. I have the DVD set, and that's a lot of fun, so maybe you want to pick that up. So then, like, he eats it. This is very confusing. On the one hand, the pizza is drugged, and then they gas him at the same time. And then we get more backstory, and they're in the Middle East, and he's got this girlfriend, and they're not supposed to be an item because they're spies. And then she gets abducted. So I know I promised spoilers, but I mean the story is very basic. Now, if you've never seen the TV show, they give you all the backstory more or less in like the 2-minute intro. It's like great music, and then great visual storytelling. And then Patrick McGoohan's character wakes up in the village, and they take it from there. They more or less start the ground running. Now, one of the reasons for this might have been that people associated him with spy stuff already because of Danger Man. At the same time, he didn't own the rights to Danger Man, so while people might have assumed that he was playing the same character, it wasn't the same character. So then his girlfriend gets kidnapped, and then we get him talking to his superior. You got some very Jim Gordon style art here, or Jim Gordon's son, the serial killer in the Batman series, the Scott Snyder Batman series. And we learn that his girlfriend, I forget her name, Carrie or something like that, has been kidnapped by the village to get to him. At least that's what his boss strongly suggests. And then his boss wants him to assassinate somebody, and the guy says, "I'm not an assassin." Uh, and then we also get some more clues. Here is, let's see what it says. This is Le Grand Quai. So right here. So this is allegedly the kilo that's kept in a vault in France, I think. What does it say here? This is Le Grand Quai, the platinum weight used to determine the kilogram and kept in a secret vault beneath Paris. 2 years ago, it was discovered the weight had been stolen and replaced with a fractionally heavier one. The crash of the euro resulted from rumors of the theft. The perpetrators of this crime might be suggested by the mark they left on the precious object, which is the letter V. So it's either V for vendetta or V for village. And then they stole Einstein's brain because apparently Einstein is the highest intelligence ever. Like, that's just a lot. That's a myth. A lot of people believe it. He was very smart. I'm not saying that, but no human being is the smartest because somebody's going to come along and be smarter. And probably the most intelligent human being is somebody you're not going to know because they're going to be smart enough to kind of stay out of the limelight and maybe pull the strings from behind. Pull the string. I think that's Ed Wood, Bela Lugosi reference. Okay, so anyways, the village is super secret. Nobody knows who they are, but they like to taunt people. They're kind of like serial killers, and they leave a little calling card when they do something, I guess. So, this is all stuff that's new. This has nothing to do with the TV series. But at the same time, it's not so radical that it turns me off. Well, I think this episode or this issue could have been better. I really still enjoyed it because of what's coming next, I hope. So yeah, he's just kind of like what you end up here. It's almost like Inception because you get like, you got the beginning thing where he's whatchamacallit. Then you get him getting drugged with the pizza and gassed. And then he goes into like his stint in the Middle East, coming back from the Middle East and learning more about the village. Yeah, right here is where he's being told he's got to be an assassin. He says, "I'm not a bloody assassin, damn it." And like there's a lot of noise. And like the secretary comes in and says, should I call security section? No, sorry, if we're just having a frank exchange of views before Mr. Breen agrees to carry out his orders. So that's a difference also. So like apparently this Breen is going to be the new number 2, and we kind of know his name. Although at the beginning of the book where he's changing his identity, he says like, at the beginning of this job, I changed my identity so much, I began to like wonder who I really was. But after a while, you get kind of used to it. And so he goes, "To hell with your orders, to hell with the unit." And then I think he's trying to, I think that's why he goes to the bed and breakfast, is he's trying to get the attention of the village because what turns out is happening is he breaks into, or he thinks he does, because he's hallucinating. So I don't know how much of this is going to turn out to be true. But he breaks into his unit's very secret sector, and there's this thing called Pandora's box. It's like he's able to figure out the key code because it's the Queen's birthday. And then like, he tells here about like, getting past security. It's like you just act, don't lose your nerve, act like you belong there. And he tells the guy, you see me every bloody day. And then he goes into here. And this room has like some weird thing where it's based on the waxing or waning of the moon. And he's not even sure what it's doing, but somehow he's able to get across to, this part seemed the most ridiculous to me. But again, it's not like overly, like everything in the or TV show was a low budget sci-fi show, a sci-fi feel to it. So I could see something like this. At least symbolically, it makes sense because it's Pandora's box. This is the forbidden fruit, the thing that releases evil into the world. And in his hallucination, he opens it. And then we end up back in his bed and breakfast where he thinks he's seeing his girlfriend. And her name was Carrie. How about that? I got that right. So he's like, Pandora, I took it all in. And now I'll exchange it for Carrie. and then he thinks he sees her. And then you see, this is like part of the beginning of The Prisoner. There was a guy dressed as an undertaker who came for number 6. And of course, he wasn't number 6 until they take him to the village. So then he talks about having strange dreams. And now in the original story, Patrick McGoohan was taken to an exact replica of his apartment, or his flat, as they call him in England. And so in this case, they're not doing that. They, I kind of wondered, would he think he was still, he was talking. See, that might have been a more interesting thing to do. Is like, I've been here for 4 days and nobody's tried to contact me yet. I'm sure they know about it. Then, like, he's ordering pizza, so he's not really going outside. So then he looks outside one day and it's the village. They somehow switched it on him without him knowing it, which, while I think that would be better, like if you're not familiar with The Prisoner, you might think, God, that's stupid. But to me, it would make more sense, is because they disorient you by giving you familiar stuff in the midst of unfamiliar stuff. And, when you're disoriented, when we're disoriented, we tend to cling to the familiar. So anyways, then we get the big reveal of the village, and it's a pretty nice panel. I think it's just based on a photograph. This is interesting here, is you got these birds, and I think they more or less, that's, there are 3 V's, which V in Hebrew is Vav, which is the 6th letter. So that tends to be 666. Now here you've got 2 that are in a V shape and one that's almost flat. So this could be 66, representing Kabbalistically the abyss. So, and then like here, he realizes he's in the village. So, I would say this first issue is just okay, but it wasn't terrible. There wasn't anything about it that I thought strayed too far from canon. Like, I don't know, what was it, around 2008, Jim Caviezel and the guy who played Gandalf, they did a new updated version of the Prisoner. And while I watched the whole thing, it was more or less forgettable and confusing. And I don't really, I really don't know what it was about. And it's never going to be anybody's favorite show. In that case, like, Jim Caviezel was number 6, and he was pretty good. The other guy was too. What the heck is his name? Anyways, so Gandalf was pretty good too, but he was number 2, and he was the only number 2. They didn't switch him out like they did in the old TV show. So that was a little weird. So yeah, I also did notice, like, here, I'll see if I can get this up. So there are alternative covers. So being a fan of The Prisoner, I might try to get some more of these covers. I would like that one. I like that one. And I like the one with Patrick McGoohan. That's him there. And this is a nice one. And this one especially, this is the Kirby cover. This is the one he drew for his proposed series that he was going to do. Was it with Art Simonson? I forget. I should have looked it up beforehand. Anyway, so that's going to bring this session of Super Comic Fun Times Daily Vlog to a close. Hope you enjoyed it. Are you a fan of The Prisoner? Let me know. Did you get this book? Did you enjoy my, I hope you did get it and that you've read it, and then we can compare notes. Maybe you liked it more than me. Maybe you think it's the worst thing ever and you're not going to get the other issues. I'm definitely getting the other issues. I knew I would be getting the other issues unless it was really, really terrible. And it's not. It's flat right now. It's like, it can go up, I think. I think it will go up from here. They've got all the backstory stuff out of the way. And, I found out about a radio show that hopefully is good too. I haven't heard of. So we will give that we will see if we can give it a listen somewhere. And so, yeah, remember, hit the like, check below for the links. They're the same links as everything. So if you haven't signed up for the Jawbreakers Indiegogo yet and you want to, you'll find the link down there. You'll find the links to the House of Mystery I talked about yesterday there, and the last few books I reviewed, as well as my Amazon affiliate links. So, you know, support the channel. If you're going to use Amazon anyways, why not do it for my link? Thank you very much. And Super Comic Fun Time out.